Now, one thing you must know about any of these microreflex sights is that Trijicon will always have an advantage over any other company that tries to come against them and compete with them for one reason. There have been many red dot companies that have tried to come up against the renowned Trijicon RMR. All of them always left us wanting more. But that all might change today. So I was originally supposed to review this red dot about a year ago. Downside was the very first batch of Holosun 507Cs that came out were recalled. When I went to the range, I literally put, I think, 3 magazines on my Glock 34 through it, and it failed. It just completely stopped working. And I tried changing the battery, nothing worked. So I contacted Holosun, and that was before I knew about the recall. And they said, hey, send it back to us, we'll send you another one. I was like, cool. So that's what I did. But I also bought an additional one because I was a little bit worried about the sample size. It's like, okay, cool, I could have a sample size of 1 and maybe it works, but then I also had a sample size of 1 before and it didn't work. So I got an additional one to continue testing and things of that nature. I want to kind of preface this video with one thing, and I think the biggest drawback to every single red dot that's ever come out that tried to compete with the Trijicon RMR has failed to do one thing. They don't fit Trijicon RMR mounting plates. And what I mean by that is typically, especially if you shoot Glock, if you go buy an aftermarket slide that's going to be already milled for a red dot, it's always going to be for a Trijicon. You'll be very hard pressed to find a aftermarket slide that is already cut for any other optic. And that has always been a problem because unless you had modular optics, like on here, this is a modular optic system on the FN 509 Tactical. They also have them on the M&P Core series, and they also have them on the Glock MOS. And I believe CZ has modular optics now as well, and I think some of the Canik guns do now. However, that's only been in like the past year that all of that stuff has kind of come to fruition. Before, it was literally just the M&P and the Glock. That always concerned people because if you can't go buy a slide that will fit the footprint of another aftermarket one, like this one's the Vortex Viper, you're gonna be like, well, should I actually have an OEM slide or a blank slide cut to fit it? And the question to that has always been, well, probably not. Now, before we talk about the Holosun 507C and the Trijicon RMR, I want to talk about a couple of red dots that I have tried in the past that I feel almost could kind of compete, but they failed in a bunch of areas. The first one is the Vortex Viper. Now, for the past couple of years, I have felt like that this has been the closest competitor to the Trijicon RMR, not so much in its ruggedness, but in its usability, its small size. And I've always liked how this works. You get about 3 months of battery life with this one, but it had a lot of drawbacks. The first drawback to this one was on the back here, it has these set screws, so you have to loosen those so you can zero this. And the reason that those set screws suck is you have to loosen them to re-zero it, and then you tighten them to lock the zero down. The problem with that is when it's actually mounted to your gun. So if it was mounted onto this gun, the rear sight then blocks the set screws. So what you basically had to do was take it out and zero it without a rear sight on it, then install the rear sight after the fact. And that was always kind of a pain in the butt, especially when you had to do a battery change and do a re-zero. That was just kind of a pain in the butt. The second thing that I didn't like about the Vortex Viper was the auto shutoff feature. I think you only got about 12 hours of battery life with this one, and it would automatically shut off. So if you carried your gun for more than 12 hours a day, you had to be able to be consciously aware of it and say, oh, let me turn my red dot back on. Also, every morning when you got up, if you have your gun in the holster like I do, you always had to remember to turn your red dot on. That's not bad if this is your first red dot ever, because you will remember it. But coming from a Trijicon or something else that you don't have to turn the battery on, that could be a little bit of a problem. But the biggest problem that this one had didn't even have to do with the battery life. It didn't even have anything to do with having to remember to turn it on. Was you had to have modular optics system in order to run it on a handgun, or you had to have your slide milled for this, meaning if you milled it, then you're stuck with it. Now, I have tried the Vortex Razor red dot, but I've only used that on my AR-15s. I've never put it on a handgun, but that thing is awesome. But when you start looking at the price of the Vortex Razor red dot, you're now entering the territory of the price range of the Trijicon RMR. I never really felt like that those two were comparable to one another because the prices were so similar. After the Vortex Viper, the next Trijicon alternative I tried was the Adaball MRD version 2. And this actually proved to be a decent red dot, but it had a lot of things about it that I didn't like. It had a battery size in which I couldn't find locally where I live. maybe where other people live, they can find them locally, but it had a different size battery than what we typically find on other micro red dots. The other features that I didn't like about the MRDV2 was that this one had 8,000 hours of battery life on the lowest setting and 200 hours on the highest setting. I don't remember what this one was on the Vortex, but I think it was pretty much the same. Another thing that I didn't like about this one was the fact that it had a 5-hour auto shut off. So you're not gonna put that on a defensive handgun and have to remember to power it on every single time. I'm not gonna go into all the specs about this. It's a good red dot, I would say, for like your AR-15s if it's just going to the range, but it wasn't for a defensive handgun. That's just the way I look at it. It also had a different footprint than the Trijicon RMR, so then you either had to have a modular optics or you needed to go out and have your slide milled. Now I understand that you can get those dovetail mounts, but I hate those things. I don't think they run right. The last time I tried one, it caused my slide to not reciprocate properly. Some people have had good luck with them, but I just don't consider dovetail mounts a good solution for a defensive handgun, so I'm not even gonna consider those. But I do have videos on both of these, the Viper and on the MRDV2. The Viper one's really old. I mean, it's like one of my first videos from 3 years ago. I just gave you the update basically. And then the MRDV2, I did that one, I think about 8 or 9 months ago. And there's also the Leupold Delta Point Pro, which it had a lot of cons as well, meaning it was huge, the battery life wasn't as good, and it also had its own proprietary footprint. So with that said, let's dive up close. Let's compare the Holosun 507C to my all-trusty Trijicon RMR, see if it stands a chance, and then we're gonna talk about how it performed at the range and if I had any issues or not. And then we're gonna talk about, knowing what I know now, would I buy it again? Don't worry guys, I will have links for both of these in different places where you can get them. If you're watching this on YouTube, just click the very first link in the video description. It'll take you to a separate page where this video is being hosted, but over there is where the links are now, so we can comply with YouTube's rules. And I'll also try to find some promo codes and stuff like that for both of these. I can't guarantee it, but I'm gonna do my best. So that way you might be able to get one of these on sale or not. Got my Holosun 507C right here, and we're just gonna kind of go over what the differences are in these. And then later on, we're gonna go over my final impressions of it and also how it performed at the range, because that's ultimately the most important thing. When I first got into guns and I was thinking about getting a red dot, I looked at the price of an adjustable LED Trijicon RMR and I thought, you gotta get out of here. There's no way I'm gonna pay that much money for a red dot. I mean, seriously, I was like, why would anyone on earth spend, I think at the time they were about $500. I was like, my Glock costs $500. Why on earth would I spend the same amount of money on an optic? So I kept trying different alternatives. You know, I tried the Vortex Viper, like I showed you earlier, tried the Vortex Venom, and they were great, but they all had these features that you had to learn to get around. You know, you had to remember to turn them back on. And then one day, the Trijicons went on sale for a crazy cheap price, for like $300, I believe. And I bought one. And ever since then, I'm like, I get it. I understand what the craze is about. I understand why people trust their life with these, because they just work very, very well. So I wanted to show you a couple of the different ones that I have, and then we're going to talk about the Holosun. So this is the RM06. Don't think we're going to be able to get a good looking dot on here. All these guns have been cleared, guys. So for those who get worried, you're going to be fine. See if I can get the focus out for you. So you can see that 3.25 MOA dot. And then right here, this one is the 6.5 MOA dot. This one over here is a 3.25 as well. And then this one is the dual illumination ones. And I hate this thing. It has a green chevron. And to be really honest with you, it sucks ass. Like, it looks good under this because I have really bright lighting, but if you get into any type of dim situation, it's not good. And the way that this one works is it collects light through this collector here. It does have a little bit of tritium in it as well, and then it projects a little chevron. And you can also see a big difference in the glass tinting. This one's like a purple tint, and this one has like a bluish green tint. Now that you've seen those, let's look at the Holosun. Let me put something black down here so we can see the dot. Okay, so with this one, you get a 2 MOA dot, or if you press and hold the minus button, I believe it is, it will change into a circle. See if I can zoom you guys into that. So there we have the circle. That's a 32 MOA circle. Press and hold it again, And then we get the 2 MOA dot in the center of the 32 MOA circle. Press and hold it again, and it goes back to the 2 MOA dot, and that's the brightest setting on it. Okay, bring that up because that's the brightest setting for this one, and then that's the brightest setting on the Trijicon. So if we put those side by side, Trijicon, okay, you can see the Holosun there. See the Trijicon here. The Trijicon is a little bit brighter. Let's look at a size comparison of these. All right, so comparing them on the sides, I'm going to align the rear. Okay, so the rears are aligned. You can see it's a little bit longer, maybe millimeters. And then as far as the height is concerned, we get the bases of them level. You can see the difference in height as well. And then on the side profile, you can see the difference in the thickness of the hoods right here that cover the glass. That's kind of a big deal right there. On the top of the Holosun, you also got this, what they're calling the fail-safe solar panel. And what this does is, with that CR32 battery ever gets low, or if it completely dies, or even if there's not a battery in it, as long as there's ambient lighting, you will have a red dot that works, which is great, I think. So on the Holosun, if you want to change it from auto brightness to manual brightness, you just press and hold the plus button. Okay, so now it's on auto brightness. And you can see the dot down there. And then if I cover this up, you can see how the dot goes dim and gets bright. It's kind of an abrupt change. It's really responsive actually, which is kind of cool. Let's zoom that in. Covered, uncovered. Pretty quick. And then if you press and hold this again, you can go right back to the manual brightness. So I will note that on manual brightness, it does get brighter than if you have it on automatic brightness. So for some reason on automatic brightness, it will not get as bright as it does if you have it manually and turn it all the way up. On the Trijicon RM06 and RM07, it's kind of the same thing. You have a manual brightness here, or if you press and hold both buttons on each side, so you got a plus button here, you got a minus button here. If you press them simultaneously, I don't know why, but it's really hard to see on camera that the Trijicon RMR's automatic brightness, but I can guarantee you that it does work. It's just for some reason it doesn't want to play right on camera today, but it does the same thing, but it's a more gradual change. It's not quite as abrupt as it is with the Holosun. On the front of these lenses, they are both anti-reflective coatings. That is to reduce any types of glare from sun or lights that comes through here. Also, you'll notice looking at these on the white, they are about the same exact tint color. They got a little bit of a bluish green hue to them. Both of them are present on these red dots. And some people don't like the bluish hues, and I totally understand because I don't like the purple hue of this one. So on the Vortex Viper, it's a little bit more clear. I did try the Shield Sights RMS and it was so clear, I almost couldn't even pick up the dot. One of the reasons why we have that is to apply like a filter over our target so that the red dot pops. Just in case, like let's just pretend they're wearing red clothing. Well, if you have a blue cast over them, that red dot will stand out from red clothing. That's kind of one of the reasons why they do that. The Zero, it works identically. You put a flat head in here, you could turn that left or right. Up here, turn that left or right. Same thing on the Holosun. The zeroing method is identical. So if you like how easy the Trijicons are to zero, then you're probably gonna love the Holosun. Whereas like with this one, like I was showing you, you got these set screws in the back that you have to loosen and they're always blocked by the rear sight. That's always been a problem with the Vortex. So let's jump up top. Let's talk about the battery life. Let's talk about 3 things that the Holosun has that the Trijicon RMR doesn't. Let's go over the range footage, talk about whether or not it holds 0. And then I'm gonna give you guys my final opinion. Knowing what I know now, would I buy it or not? Back up top. All right, cool. You can see that the Holosun looks to be a lot larger than it really is due to the ruggedness of the design of it. It just, from a side profile, it just looks huge and massive. Compared to the Trijicon RMR, you know, this one doesn't look quite as large. It's nice and squared off, less material on it. Now, one thing you must know about any of these microreflex sights is that Trijicon will always have an advantage over any other company that tries to come against them and compete with them for one reason. You see how on the top of this, it's curved? That is a structural design to prevent the glass from breaking. If you notice how the glass is curved here, they got it relieved here, so if it falls upside down, nothing will press on that center point of the glass because that is the weakest point of the glass. So it is designed to absorb the shock on the corners where the glass is further away and it's a little bit stronger. No other red dot company will ever be able to compete with that unless Trijicon decides to let go of their patent that they have on that. And so because they can't compete in that design language of the ruggedness of the top of this, they had to make up for it with adding more metal towards the rear, which is what makes it look a whole lot larger. So right now, I have this one and I have one other one that I've been testing. I actually sent the other one off to have it installed onto a different slide. So I don't have it with me today, but I have put, I believe, 1,000 rounds through this one, which is why I held this one back, sent the other one. And on the other one, I have 600 rounds. So a total of 1,600 rounds through these. How did they fare? As far as on the brightest setting, I will say that the Trijicon RMR appears to be a whole lot brighter than it does on the Holosun 507C, except it's not that bad. I was shooting this out in the desert in the bright sunlight, and I didn't have a problem acquiring the dot and shooting the target. Now let's talk about whether or not it held zero or not. So a couple things you should understand about these red dots holding zero is you gotta have your screws very securely installed. Typically, you're gonna be using blue Loctite on the threads to crank them down. I don't remember what the torque spec is on them, but you can look that up. No, it's in inch pounds, and then you just torque them down to spec. Make sure that that's all gravy. So as long as you've done that right, you shouldn't have a shift with your zero unless there's something faulty about the red dot. With both this one and the other one that I sent off, no issues on holding zero at all. So let's talk about the brightness settings. On the Trijicon RMR, you have 8 brightness settings, and you have, I believe, 1 or 2 that are compatible with night vision. On the Holosun 507C, you get 12 brightness settings, and 2 of them are compatible with night vision goggles. On the battery, they both take a CR2032 battery, which is a commonly found battery in any of these red dots, so I'm happy with that. For the battery life on this one, they say that you can get, Trijicon says you can get up to 4 years at the halfway point on setting 4. And on this one, they say you can get up to 10 years of battery life on setting 6 of 12. But what the Holosun offers that Trijicon doesn't is you get what they're calling the fail-safe solar panel, meaning even if your battery is completely dead, as long as there's good enough ambient light, it will still power on via the solar panel. So that's kind of cool. Now with the Trijicons, you have to choose your dot before you buy it, and they don't typically offer many other reticles aside from the red dot. They do offer a chevron if you get the dual illuminated one that doesn't use batteries, but for their LED models, it's just a dot. They got the 3.25 MOA dot. I got a 6.5 MOA dot on another one. And then they have some with smaller dots. I believe they go all the way down to 1 MOA, which is fine if that's what you're into. Personally, I prefer the 3.25 MOA dots on these because when you make them bright, they bloom out and they kind of simulate what a 6.5 MOA dot looks like. And like I showed you up close, you got 3 types of reticles that you can use on here. You get the 2 MOA dot, the 32 MOA circle, or you can have both of them combined with the dot in the middle. Now, whichever one of those you choose does kind of have an impact on your battery life. So if you go with the dot only, you're gonna get better battery life than if you go with the circle or the circle and the dot. And then the last biggest thing that this one has that the Trijicon RMR doesn't have is it has the shake awake feature. Meaning once this gun has been sitting still, like say on your nightstand or something like that for, I don't remember how long it takes, but once it's been sitting still for a few minutes, the red dot shuts off. The moment you even barely touch this gun, it senses movement and it cranks that red dot on for you. And that really does aid in the reliability and the longevity of the battery. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of the Holosun 507C. This red dot has 3 things that the RMR doesn't have, but it's lacking 2 things that the RMR does have. First thing, shake away. Second thing, thing, multi-reticles. Third thing, it has solar panels. Trijicon does not have that. However, the Trijicon has a couple of things that this one doesn't have. First one, the proprietary design right here with the window. So it's probably going to be a lot tougher. The second thing that Trijicon has that Holosun doesn't have is military contracts. The one thing that's great about a Trijicon RMR is they're gonna run. I've never had a Trijicon RMR fail on me, and I have about 4 of them. I even have the dual illuminated one, which I just don't care for because it's not bright enough. But I've never had an issue with any of these losing 0 or a battery dying before about 18 months. But I do keep mine running a little bit brighter because I live in the desert. However, with this one, I'm still gonna have to have more time with it. You know, time is something that we can't rush. We can't accelerate battery life. We can't accelerate the wearability of these. I mean, we could try to simulate it, but overall, you can't recreate carrying it every single day, taking it out, shooting it, dropping it on the ground. I mean, in a realistic manner. So this is definitely gonna take more time for me to come up with a final review. If you get the adjustable LED model, it's gonna cost you anywhere from about $425 to $525, just depending on where you get them. Usually you can get them for about $425 for the Type 2s. I don't know if you can still find Type 1s, but if you can, they're usually in the $300 range for the Type 1s. This is gonna cost you $299 on average, sometimes less. If I can find promo codes, it'll be less. Sometimes it might cost you a little bit more, just kind of depending. These are really hard to find in stock, so keep that in mind as well. But I think that this is almost equal to the Trijicon RMR as far as functionality and features. I had 0 issues with this thing holding 0. I took it out to the range, I put rounds through it, I would rack it off my belt and keep shooting. I didn't rack it off tables and stuff because I just didn't have any tables to rack it off of. Needless to say, it's working very, very well now that they fixed the initial batch that went out. So knowing what I know now, I'm definitely gonna buy more of these. I probably will stop buying Trijicons because I have about 4 of them. So unless Trijicon wants to send me a new one or something to review, I'm probably just going to keep buying these to put on guns because they seem to be working on both of them that I have right now. So if anything does go wrong with it though, I'm definitely going to be making a video to warn everybody, hey, sorry, I may have spoke too soon about something. You guys know me, that's just how I roll. I'll always tell you if something starts screwing up. I kind of want to ask what your guys' opinion is. Knowing what you know about these right now, which one do you think you would trust your life with? I mean, tried and true Trijicon RMR or Holosun 507C. I think this would be a fantastic concealed carry gun option or something for your home defense gun. If you don't like this video, just double tap on the dislike button. If you like it, I think you already know what to do. But guys, I want you guys to understand something here. I love you. You guys stay safe, stay sexy, and I'll see you in the next video.